Okay, I'm gonna try my best to share this book. I'm sure every creator goes through this. Nothing really seems to work out. So this is a book called Distant Corner by a Jeff Oshner and Dennis Anderson. And it focuses on Seattle architects and the legacy of HH Richardson, whom I think is not a legitimate person, at least architect. So I thank you for being here today. I hope you're all well. God bless and welcome. I think I'll make several videos on this book. I'm recording this on my phone so I can have it above the book, but I do have a little microphone here. So I just want to read the preface to begin, and then we'll get into what I consider some very interesting research. Seattle Architects and the Legacy of H.H. Richardson is a study of the architects and the architecture of a single city during a specific period of time. The city of Seattle. The time is the last 2 decades of the 19th century, with a primary focus on the years from 1889 to 1895. So a 6-year period, approximately. A time when the influence of the leading American architect Henry Hobson Richardson was at its height. Seattle has in recent decades been ranked amongst the most livable cities. How such rankings are determined is not clear, but the city's attractive setting, continuing vitality of its downtown, this must have been written pre-pandemic, of course, and a wide variety of urban neighborhoods, parks, historic districts are a factor contributing to the city's livability. That Seattle should have achieved this kind of urban character seems all the more remarkable. And this is the author of this book, given its short history. In contrast to cities in the East, stretching back several hundred years, Seattle is the result of incredibly rapid urban development that has taken place over little more than the last century. Although the city was founded in 1851, significant growth was delayed by a variety of factors. As late as 1880, the census counted only a little more than 3,000 people in this frontier community. However, largely as a result of achievement of national rail connections, growth after 1880 was rapid, and the census counted 42,000 people in 1890. So in 1880, they have 3,000 people, and in 1890, they have 42,000. And not only does the population boom, but even more suspiciously, the city, the parks, and all the historic architecture, now historic. This population explosion was accompanied by dramatic physical change. June 1889, the core of Seattle was destroyed by fire. So really having a rough go, if we're accepting this narrative. But within 4 years, rebuilding was completed, with 4, 5, 6, and 7-story structures built of brick and stone, frames of metal, timber, terracotta, and cast iron. So just having it all. In the same period, new cable cars, streetcars lined the urban pattern of tightly knitted single-family residential neighborhoods. In 1895, construction had almost ceased because of the devastating effect of the national economic collapse. As a result of rapid growth and frenzied construction in a sharply limited time frame, Seattle offers a condensed version of the architectural transformation of an American city in the late 19th century. Here is a look at downtown Seattle, page 2, after the 1889 fire. So just, if we're to believe the narrative, a complete waste of their investment. Some of these buildings, not even 5 or 10 years old, now in ruins. The city's looking like every city in this time period. And here we can see Seattle in the 1890s, looking north on Front Street. Pioneer Building is on the right. the one on the cover of this book. And come on, 10 years prior, they had 3,000 people. And now this, looking so old. Look at this brick. Look at the condition. And way, way too teched out. Look at the people. And streets of brick. I hope it's showing up. And this is just absolutely fascinating because these guys, I think, are a couple of architects. And they're kind of baffled. Actually, 100% baffled. I think concluding everything that I would, but wanting to perhaps not offend anybody and try to stick to the narrative. And they've done a great job of presenting it. Downtown Seattle, looking north from Cherry, 1891. 2 years after the fire. Just over the top. Here they say, because the city's downtown business district burned in 1889 and was rebuilt over the next several years, the architecture of Seattle in this period presents a tightly focused episode in the history of American late 19th century architecture. And I think it makes a good case for the things that we research. Happening so late, even later than Salt Lake City, we can examine it more carefully. So here we have pre-fire Seattle. So here we can see a building in 1859, Yesler's, and this looks like some old cowboy building. It looks like a building today. Yet we see a castle in the background, a spire, and here we can see the city of Seattle. This is page 18, and this is in 1878. So this doesn't really make sense either. Again, the population should be so small, and everything has been laid out to perfection, like a modern city. The coastlines, perhaps the most impressive feats in my opinion, have been shaped to accommodate shipping in 1878, given the history that we just read. And what really interested me about this book was all the buildings that had been destroyed. And they showcase this. They were shocked themselves. And one would never see these photos because one would not know that they even existed. Not the buildings nor the photos. Here we can see in 1861 a building that was destroyed. John Pike, Washington Territorial University Building. There was probably 1,000 people, if we're to believe their narrative. Who are you building this for? Here we can see some huts in the background. And here we go, 1861, way before things get rolling. We have full mature trees and this abandoned building that they're going to call the University Building, randomly, in 1861. And look again, here, 1878. So this comes after this, and we're just all shacked out. More shacks than normal houses in this picture. And yet again, the piers, the artificial coastlines, the canals, the streets, cut out. And here, just to jump around a little bit, here's what's going on in the surrounding area. A building called the Phelan Building. The architect is unidentified. In 1878. Well, they got lazy. They didn't need a story because this building has been destroyed. The Phelan Building in San Francisco. Destroyed. We can see they used it for a short period. They put their stupid little awnings, cloth, tacky awnings down here. But in the end, they didn't appreciate this baby. Destroyed. Here we can see another destroyed building in Portland, Oregon, 1884. The Justin Crumbine Building. Whatever. Stupid. Little man standing here. I mean, could anything be more glorious than this? 1884. So this might have been built in 1 year, or maybe they don't know. Maybe the builders and architect are unidentified as well. So anyway, Oregon, the old Oregon Trail. Here we go, 1884. Can you imagine the cowboys discovering this? Look at the streets, complete brick, looking like a white porcelain kind of brick, actually. 2 destroyed buildings, no history, unidentified architect. 1838 to 1884, the Martin Van Buren House, destroyed. A little modest house next to it, just to show that this is not normal. And here, the Warren, Williams, and Justice Crumbine, again with the crumb, Presbyterian Church, 1876, and destroyed. Mud flood street, I imagine it's this one. But we have another cathedral right here, just packing the neighborhood full of cathedrals. Again, when there's only a few thousand people. Here, another destroyed building, all really having this same feel. 1882 to 1883, the hospital, built in a year and destroyed. The unneeded hospital. Okay, another Donald McKay hotel this time. 1882 to 1884, built in 2 years and destroyed. Right on the corner, good real estate. We can't have this gaudy building now. Look at the people, just a bunch of worthless people, in my opinion. Posing, everybody posing, and everybody out of place. Bunch of asses, if you ask me. Not capable of building something like this. And hence the importance of destroying as much of it as you can, because it doesn't make any sense. Here, the Boone and Meeker LBRY building. And this just seems like a made-up word, almost seeming like yesteryear or lesser year building. 1882 to 1883, destroyed. Again, the primitive horse and cart riding people lining the streets. Cheap awnings made of cloth again. And the city is complete, 100% complete. Boone and Meeker, built in a year and destroyed. Every one of these stories is just ridiculous, and I love that they've showcased them all. But I want to get in as many destroyed buildings as possible. Here, the Opera House, destroyed. Built in 2 years, 1883 to 1885. Cheaply repurposed for a short time. Cloth awnings. Just ugly. I hated these since my childhood. Just tacky, that's all. And here, 2 years, the Methodist Church, destroyed. And this thing is huge. It looks tiny in this picture, but here we can see a person. Didn't need it. God didn't need it. The poor didn't need it. No. Destroyed. 1882 to 1883, a school. Destroyed. Beautiful school. Looks like it was never finished. Or is this debris from the reset? The Isaac Palmer Central School. Here we see the Donovan Denny School. Just stupid, all these names. Really, this is the Donovan and Meany Denny School. Destroyed, built in a year. The school district wished to build a third school, but the city's economic decline after 1883 meant construction could not be financed. Are you kidding me? These people seem to have a blank check. Here, destroyed. The James McNaught House. Made up names. The Knott House. It's the Knott House. It's not going to be allowed to remain. Built in a year and destroyed. They tell us in 1880 it was the most significant structure in the city. Built in a couple of years and destroyed. The Boone and Meeker and Singerman building. Destroyed. 1887. Totally mud flooded. Old and weathered. Here they've thrown some boards out here. Looks like they're going to try to repurpose it. Just an old weathered mess. Look at the take-up here. Take-up here. I mean, really going over the top for something that's just going to be destroyed. I mean, somebody spent a lot of money on this top half. And the bottom half that's now buried. Looking east on Yesler Avenue. The Boone and Meeker block. The block. Built in 2 years. Destroyed. The whole damn block destroyed. And we saw some of these buildings. So yeah, they destroyed the buildings. But actually here we discover that they destroyed the whole block. Look at these primitive asswipes. Look at this street. Look how they've built stairs going up. Some wooden boardwalk here just to access this building that they would destroy anyway. And this really caught my attention. The ZCMI. Well, I saw that. That's a Utah thing. And this is a Mormon church-owned business. They have a mall called the ZCMI. And yet this looks like something that was written here before these inheritors. And we see the same thing in downtown Salt Lake City, but they erased the LES and turned it into ZCMI. I think this ZCMI is an old world thing. But in this case, it's ZCMI. sea miles, stoves, ranges, and tinware. Yeah, I don't even think these people are manufacturing stoves, ranges, and tinware yet. These are cowboys. These are mining cowboys. I mean, this story reads like Salt Lake City or San Francisco and just doesn't make any sense when we consider the means these people are supposed to have. And way in the early history, we're destroying entire blocks. Again, similar to San Francisco, there was a fire. But we're also told, when you read into the history, which most people will never do, that the fire department was dynamiting entire blocks to prevent the fire from spreading. I mean, why does that make any sense? What happened to using water and hoses? No, just helping destroy the city. And in fact, I think there was no fire. I think there was probably just dynamite. Here, another mud flutter destroyed. The Bank of British Columbia. This building appears to have been built in a year and altered. So maybe they just dumbed it down a little bit. But look at the people again. Look at this stupid wooden boardwalk. You can see a little gap here under. Why would you do that? If all this is built out of brick and metal, concrete, you have all the abilities in the world. And you're going to make a cheap boardwalk around it? And sometimes I think they destroy buildings, but they tell us that they were unbuilt. As we can see here, the Fisher and Clark building, unbuilt. But I think they're actually just documenting them for themselves. And this one was built, the Fisher Scurry Terrace, and it was destroyed. This building, the Gilmore and Kirkman building, destroyed, and Burke's New York block, destroyed. And I've told you in past videos before, and here this kind of confirms it, that these buildings were the size of blocks. And sometimes the inheritors would come in and make several storefronts and kind of chop the building up into pieces, but ultimately being one large building. Here we see the Olympia Hotel, 1889, it was destroyed. This one looking very Swiss. And here is a great picture. Looking south on Front Street towards the fire, 1889. And I think it's really great because it shows the tackiness of the people. All their cheap signs, their cheap tents. Here we go. Here we see a more accurate depiction of the Wild West. Boardwalk, sidewalks, tents, cheap wooden buildings. This is what every city should look like in this time period. In no way should we be destroying buildings that are 100 times more impressive. So here we see the ruins now, after the fire. I mean, look at this. Just old world as could be. And we're told this was all just freshly built and then burnt and then rebuilt. Look at this old stone wall underground. Here again, 1890. Some strange tech here. I mean, looking like a post-war photo and not looking like the people who must have originally inhabited this sophisticated city, not an old wester. Here we can see the Burke Building, 1889 to 91, destroyed. Mud flutter, and really, really looking modern, looking historical, but kind of the peak. I always say that these old buildings appear to be the peak of a civilization, not the beginning of one. And I think this really depicts that well. And here we can see the Occidental Hotel, later the Seattle Hotel, one of the first fashionable travelers' hotels erected after the fire. There we go. So fashionable, but in the end, it was destroyed. Look at the streets of brick. Zillions of bricks. Here, the completed Corn Building. To the right is still under construction. The hotel is on the left. So here we go. This is what construction looks like. What are they doing here? It looks like they're still working on the road. You want to tell me you're building this building, but the road comes first. You don't build from the top down. Look at this mess. No. Here we see exactly what's going on, and they want to utilize this section. They're going to have to build their wooden platform and just cover all this up, as it still is today. New street levels everywhere. Reconstruction after the fire, 1889. No joke. Here, a glorious architect Albert Wickersham in his office. Wicker or burning ham. I think he looks drunk, and I don't think he gives a damn about architecture. Here we can see the Pioneer Building, the one on the cover, 1889 to 1891. This one, super intricate columns, seeming to use a concrete polymer type blend in a mold. And I think this writing here will have been done in modern times, whoever inherited this building. And I couldn't help but notice that this plaque is crooked. So now I think they're just showing us some Richardsonian buildings, what was going on elsewhere. So here we see a church in Boston, 1872 to 77. Look at this church, look at this tech up here. I mean, who's using this part? Surely the Lord would not approve. And look at all this wood. Here we go, a shitty wooden house in front of this castle. Just the irony. Look at this pile of wood that they've just thrown on the side here. It makes me sick to see wood like that. It's just going to start twisting. You want to stack it and put something heavy on it to keep it straight. Here in Harvard, Cambridge, Massachusetts, built in a couple years. And the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall. Really interesting, the Ames. The Ames Monument that I showed once in the middle of Wyoming, apparently designed by Richardson. And nobody's ever heard of the Ames brothers, and they were accused of fraud, even in their false history. Why would anyone give them a memorial? But anyway, here, this is a memorial. What the hell? At least call it a church or something. Here, the Harvard University, again, Richardsonian, Austin Hall. Here in Chicago, Richardsonian building, 1885 to 87, destroyed. The whole block. And another Richardsonian, the county courthouse in Pittsburgh, looking just like the courthouse in Tacoma, Washington, hence why they have to tell us that these people were inspired by this, what is, in my opinion, a fictitious man. Especially when you see pictures of him. He was all eccentric and dressed funny and really seemed like a moron in every regards. Another Richardsonian in Cincinnati, Chamber of Commerce. Took him a couple years to build this monstrosity, only to destroy it. Now simply part of the historical records. We don't even get a proper photo, although you can tell this was a photo and has been rendered to hide its glory. Here another destroyed building by Richardson in Boston, a 2-year wonder, looking old and destroyed. City Hall, Albany, New York, and a library in Massachusetts. Here in St. Louis, Missouri, built in a couple years and destroyed. The Newcomb Building. And for the last few minutes of this video, I'll use a different pointer. Shout out to Roger. Here we see a destroyed building, the Pierce County Courthouse in Tacoma, Washington. So they didn't have enough courthouses in Tacoma? Well, apparently they did, because they destroyed it. Built in 3 years, just beautiful. Primitive people in the mud. Here we see a Masonic temple in Minnesota. And the Lion Burger Wholesale Warehouse, St. Louis, built in 1 year and destroyed. There we go. In San Antonio, Texas, we see a post office and courthouse destroyed, built in a couple years. Look at this castle. Unbelievable. Here we see Wichita, Kansas, built in a couple years. And down here, Los Angeles, County Courthouse destroyed. What an absolute beauty. What the hell? This is Los Angeles. Just look at the background. Look at everything. Here's your Los Angeles in 1886. Fit for a queen? Although I don't think a queen is fit for anything. I think we should take all royalty to the... It's just my opinion. Here in Chicago, a building built by Burnham and Root, people that worked on the World's Fair in Chicago. Threw this baby up in 1 year, only to destroy it. Spilling is fine. I would be fine today. Another Burnham and Root in Chicago. The Art Institute destroyed. Over here, Burnham and Root destroyed Chicago. So they just celebrated these architects but destroyed most of their work. Now we're back in Tacoma, Washington. Built in a couple years. The Fidelity Trust Company destroyed. This one in Minneapolis has been altered. Destroyed here in Minneapolis. Again destroyed, Minneapolis, and again destroyed. 3 amazing buildings. Courthouse in Minneapolis. And I think I'll just leave it there for now. I'm not sure if this recording is even gonna take. I definitely used a strange technique to record this one. I'm hoping I can make some kind of sense of it. So I thank you for joining me this week. I hope you've enjoyed. I love you all. God bless, and I'll see you soon.